kick off, or you both, either one of you will speak first?
I will be the moderator today.
Oh, so you will introduce the session for today first, ah?
Yes, yes.
I see. All right.
Richard will be my co-host. Yes, thank you.
All right. Thank you.
We shall wait for more people to come. Probably we will start, to all the participants, we may start if you get about 20 to 30 people, maybe 8:05, the latest that we'll start. So please be patient. Thank you. So it's 2 minutes to 8. We'll give probably about 8:02 to 8:03 to see to start this webinar. And please be patient with us and stay tuned. Probably give it 1 more minute. Yeah. Participants are coming in. All right, we shall start. Yeah, so we have a good amount of participants as of as I'm speaking now. 8:02. We have 41 participants. Just for your for your own knowledge. So let me introduce myself first. Hello everyone. So thank you for making time on this really rainy Saturday. It's raining at my area here. And I would like to thank you for coming and attending our third webinar series of under the Funhub from organized by KFSC. And my name is Ivy Chai, and I'm actually currently the Vice Secretary of KFSC. And I welcome you all today to today's webinar entitled Cybersecurity Best Practices in Telecommuting During COVID-19 by our speaker, Mr. Michael Teo. And before we get started, I'd like to go through a few housekeeping rules. Actually, I don't have to go through, it's written right in the slides here. So in the screen, you'll see some general housekeeping rule. And by the way, this webinar will be recorded. And please feel free to throw in your questions anytime during the webinar, and we will take your questions at the end. The speaker will take your questions at the end of the webinar. And I would like to now introduce briefly our guest speaker, Mr. Michael Teo. You can see his face here. Yeah. So of course, originally we don't have his passport photo because I think for cybersecurity reasons he doesn't want to put it in. Maybe somebody will steal his photo or something. You know, he's a cybersecurity guy. What do you expect? So let me introduce. Put the funny part aside. So Michael Teo was actually our honorary treasurer for KFSC, and he is a seasoned cybersecurity professional with global experience over 15 years of demonstrated skill sets in information and cybersecurity domains. He's currently the principal for cybersecurity, governance, risk, and compliance in AT&T Singapore. That's where he is now, Michael. Michael has diverse engagements with multinational conglomerates from various specializations such as oil and gas industries, tech giants, healthcare agencies, consumer staples, retailers, and etc. He holds multiple international professional security certifications, to name a few. Sorry if I pronounced them wrongly. CISM, CISSP. Okay, great.
That's correct.
ISO 27001, lead auditor, COBIT 4.0, CompTIA S+, Cisco Certified Cyber Ops Associate, PMI Risk Management Professional, and IPv6 Certified Security Engineer. Oh my goodness. Mouthful. Okay, so as I said before, Michael Teo has held various positions in KFSC. Yeah, he's been a member since 2008 until 2020, from a committee member of Vice Treasurer until his last role last year as an honorary treasurer. So with this introduction, I now pass the time to Michael Teo. So enjoy the webinar. Michael?
Thank you very much, Ivy, for such a lengthy introduction. So, all right, good evening, everybody. Thank you for having me here. So without further ado, I would like to start off with the presentation. So let me share my screen. Just give me a moment. Let me share my screen. Pause screen. Are you all able to see my screen?
Yes.
All right, thank you. All right, good evening, everyone. Just a short introduction on top of what Ivy has already described just now. Some of you might aware that I was in AT&T back then in Malaysia, but I was just transferred to Singapore last year around February. But during February period, I wasn't with AT&T back then. I was still with MOH, Ministry of Health, an agency under Ministry of Health, which is called IHIS. I was there for about less than half a year. Then later on, my ex-boss actually have another position for me in Singapore. So that's where I ended up back in AT&T, but in Singapore. So that's how I'm back in the AT&T. So, all right, let's kick off with the slides for presentation today. So, all right, can you see my screen? All right, okay, so we will have 4 main agenda for today. So they are mainly the awareness of security and a little bit of introduction on cybersecurity. Later on, I'll share with you the aims of all the various cyber attacks out there in the market, as well as all the popular types that's being carried out on a daily basis to divulge information and to steal everything out of everyone for all these attacks. And of course, I'll wrap up with all the industry best practices, which we call it the cyber hygiene, to wrap up for the day. So, all right. So before we move forward, just to let you know what to expect out of this sharing for today. The sharing for today, first thing first is that there will not be any cyber attack demonstration live. That's one. Second thing is this whole session is about sharing of what you can do in order to safeguard your identity and also to protect your assets and login and whatnot, especially if you are working from home. So that is the main objective for today. So let's roll on with the slide with a survey. Can I have Ivy or Richard to display the survey, please? Let's give you a minute or two.
You may go to the poll icon right below your screen to vote for the results. Thank you. Give it another 10 seconds probably. Thank you. All right, we have ended the poll session, and we see that yes, many of us have been remotely working since the lockdown in 2020. Back to you, Michael.
Thank you. All right, I'll come back to this poll later on, but let me share with you what is cybersecurity all about. So cybersecurity, with the name per se, it's all about the protection against everything in terms of your devices. It can be your tablets, it can be your phones, it can be your PC, it can be anything that is connected to the network. So that is one element. And on top of that, we also have to safeguard all sorts of data and information that is kept in all sorts of management systems. You have things like your information management systems, your ERP, your CRM, and so on. Same goes to all sorts of other systems like your cloud systems, your banking applications, and your pool of networks and services. But how do we achieve that? Is by means of various techniques, technologies, security controls, as well as best practices. So if you notice all these icons, they just denotes all sorts of cyber threats and cyber attacks out there that's happening on a daily basis, which they can sort of compromise even your IP CCTV, your phones, your tablets, even your smartwatch, your emails, everything. So in a nutshell, cybersecurity is about protection for everything that is connected to the digital world. So, okay, so let's move on. All right, cybersecurity per se, it's actually encompasses of 3 pillars, which we call it the CIA Triad. A lot of people always mistaken CIA is actually Central Intelligence Agency, but in a cybersecurity perspective, they are not. So what the CIA stands for, it's actually confidentiality, integrity, and availability. So what is all this CIA about is that for confidentiality, in the principle of we are not to disclose any unauthorized subjects if the objects are not to be disclosed. So for example, if your clearance level are not supposed to read a certain level of files, that files are not supposed to be disclosed to you. Yeah, so that's for confidentiality. Integrity typically refers to your files or your resources or your data should not be tampered intentionally or unintentionally. Whether it can be data corruption caused by hardware issue or it's being attacked or being manipulated by attackers. So that's what integrity is all about. Notice that I have actually highlighted the availability in bold is that because just now in the poll, there is a question in terms of security is a hindrance. If you can refer to this slide, is that one of the essential elements here for cybersecurity is all about availability, whereby availability of your resources are required to be granted to all the relevant subjects if they pass all their authorization. So availability by itself is one of the key elements for cybersecurity. So in a nutshell, cybersecurity is not an hindrance per se. And in fact, nowadays, a lot of security controls, they are sort of like, we call it a seamless controls. For example, nowadays, you no longer required to type in your password. We can substitute it with your face recognition systems, we so-called Face ID, or even your fingerprints. That's one of the example. And if you still can remember the survey just now, there's one question about car brakes. It's actually counterintuitive intuitive questions whereby just you just have a thought of it. If let's say if you would like to travel faster, and just imagine the brakes it's not exist, or probably the brake is just a malfunction. Do you think would you be able to stop in time? Probably won't, right? It might actually cause a fatal accident. So basically, brakes is also a sort of safety controls that actually to regulate your speed. Same things goes to security and cybersecurity. It's a form of regulation in order for you to safeguard your resources, your files, your data, your identity, everything. So this is what I would like to let you know, that but please do not have an impression that security is always a hindrance. So yeah, that's very important to note. Okay, so let's move on. I've completed with a short introduction and awareness. Then we'll proceed with the aim of cyber attacks. Okay. So the dark side of cybersecurity, we call it the aim of cyber attacks, is that it's actually the inverse of the cybersecurity element itself. You keep things confidential, but the attackers always like to disclose them because they find that all this information always valuable. They can actually sell it to the black markets for financial gains, or probably they wanted to disrupt their corporate espionage or whatever business processes to gain competitive advantage. However, there are also things like what do you call cyber attacks that are legitimate, whereby companies actually wanted to assess their security landscape by hiring all these professionals to test and assess their networks and also their overall application architecture. So disclose is the inverse of confidential, and alteration or modification is to tamper your data, your resources without consent. Yeah, and destroy or causing denial of service is to render your system inaccessible, thereby making, we always so-called system down or network down or whatever. So yeah. So like what I've mentioned just now, most of the cyber attacks out there, especially the first two, they are always on motivated for the malicious intent, whereby they do it for financial gain by divulging your data and sell it for purpose. Usually they sell it in the dark web market and by means of cryptocurrency as payment. Yeah, and some of them they are more towards in terms of corporate or even political espionage, dealing with intellectual property or even trade secrets among business competitors. Yeah, pen tests, penetration tests, like what I've just mentioned. It's those legitimate cyber attacks that is hired by the clients to test their security landscapes. So okay, let's move on. I've also covered the aim here. We have actually quite a fair bit to cover in terms of the types of cyber attacks. So let's move on. Okay, we have 6 major ones, but they are actually interrelated to each other. All these 6 types of malwares, their main purpose is to perform DAD, disclose, alter, damage, by means of exploiting all sorts of security weaknesses, by breaching their vulnerabilities that is being discovered as and when security experts manage to find out. So what are these types of malwares? We have spywares. By the name of spywares, it's very clear cut that it's a sort of malicious ware that steals your information and runs secrets. It runs secretly to steal valuable information back to a remote controlling devices. Yeah, so that's where spyware is all about. And a lot of times you might not even aware that actually spyware are being actively running in your machine. The second one, ransomware, or widely known as WannaCry, but in our terminology we call it cryptovirology. So I think we don't need I don't need to explain further in terms of what is ransomware about. Basically, it just encrypts all your files and it demands for a ransom if you wanted to access your files again. Yeah. So what is viruses, Trojan horses, worms, and rootkits? Viruses by itself, it requires a host to actually trigger the certain logic to do the to cause damage or temperation or even to disclose information. So for example, the most widely viruses that we always encounter is all those Excel macro viruses, whereby if you don't trigger your Microsoft Excel, Word, or PowerPoint, the viruses will not run because virus require a host to actually activate. So what is Trojan horse in this case is that Trojan horse, by the name itself, it means that it actually disguises themselves as what you call legitimate software, but at the back there, they sort of have malicious connections that is connect back to the remote attacker, whereby they allows a certain covert communications for the remote attacker to control your machines. That's Trojan horse is all about. It will appear as legitimate software, but you are not aware that you have a backdoor for the remote attacker to do whatever malicious activity they want. Worms. Okay, worms by itself, it's very similar to virus, but worms doesn't require a host to execute. By the name of worm itself, it's that worms usually spread in a very rapid speed. some of the example like SQL Sasser worm that triggered during year 2004, whereby a lot of database server was being compromised. Yeah, that's worm is all about. And rootkits, it's very similar like Trojan horses, but it's an advanced version of Trojan horses. Sometimes rootkits are also known as advanced persistent threats. Why advanced persistent threats is because rootkits itself, it's very difficult to be detected, and most of the time, rootkits are also stay in the devices without being discovered, and it's there for quite a long time. One of the prominent example for rootkits that I can actually share is that there's this rootkits called Stuxnet, with the spelling of Stuxnet. It actually concealed in the Iranian nuclear plant for quite some time, and it was being triggered until someone execute the executable files. So, and key point here is that it's very, very much difficult to detect for rootkits. So these are the 6 main malwares that we see in the markets. There are a lot of other malwares out there. We call it crimeware, adware, and a lot. I'm sure that you have heard before something called keylogger. You know, keylogger is also part of spyware, whereby it steals all your passwords or even your accounts or your bank accounts or whatnot. So yeah, these are the spywares and malwares. Okay, let's move on with the next type of cyber attacks out there that is popular in the market. Phishing. I'm sure a lot of y'all heard of what phishing is all about. Phishing, it's about social engineering. Social engineering here in cybersecurity context is that we always refer them as a con artist, whereby it happens in the mode of all these unsolicited emails that you receive. We call it spam. So they always disguise as your friend or somebody that you know, or we call it a trusted or recognizable source. So they always tell you that I'm who and who, what so and what so and whatnot, and I need where am I now, and I need certain money to come back because I'm stuck in this country. Yeah, and stuck in this country, my credit card cannot work, and whatever that may be. So that is what we call phishing. The purpose is the same, is to divulge sensitive information from you, and all this information later on will turn against you. Yeah. So then what is spear phishing is that spear phishing is more towards a specific target or a specific group. So for example, if let's say those motivated attacker, they wanted to launch an attack towards a particular competitor, so they might have launched all this spear phishing against all the employees to see which or who will fall in their trap. So that's what spear phishing is all about. Before we move on to whaling, for those of you who understand Mandarin, we call it 姜太公钓鱼院子上钩. This is where phishing is all about. And for whaling, we call it 放长线钓大鱼. So that's where whaling is all about. We always target on all the high-ranking officials, such as those CEOs, C-levels, or government officials. Yeah, same purpose is for them to divulge or disclose any important information that can cause grave damage, especially on whaling. Yeah. So let's move on with the next type of cyber attacks. Okay, some of all these cyber attacks might not be very meaningful to you because it might sound very technical, but I'll try to be as layman as possible so that you can understand. The first one is man in the middle. So what does man in the middle do is that person A and person B, while they are transmitting messages or any traffics along, there's a particular perpetrator, I call it person C, and this person C tap into person A and B's communication without both A and B knowing. So same thing, what person C, the perpetrator, do is that they will sniff and copy everything what person A and B is talking. Yeah. So in fact, if person C is evil enough, he can also tamper the data between person A and B. So that's what man in the middle about. Cryptojacking, it's a little bit new for some of you. What does cryptojacking means is that attacker actually zombify, I call it zombify, it's actually turning all your machine into a compromised machines in order to provide processing power for the attacker to mine their cryptocurrencies. So what is the impact for you is that you will gradually notice that your devices will have severe degradation in terms of performance. Thereby, probably some of your service might, some of your service will be impacted. And eventually you might face denial of service, or probably we call it system down in layman term. Yeah, that's what cryptojacking about. Sometimes if you notice that your devices are getting overheat without doing, without you carry on with any activities, that might be the high likelihood of cryptojacking. But it can also mean that your device has already been aging. So that's one. These are the two likelihood for overheat. But cryptojacking is one of that. So the third one is drive-by download. Drive-by download, it can be carried on with intentional or unintentional. Intentional is that you download a certain software. That software, you might not aware that it's actually a Trojan horse, because Trojan horse, it can disguise as a legitimate software. But back there, it actually opens up another backdoor for the remote attacker to access to your machine to do all sorts of malicious things. Unintentional drive-by download is that you visited some compromised website, or you visited some risky websites, and that websites actually put a covert executables to your machine without you knowing. That is unintentional. Or another method is that you accidentally open a certain suspicious emails without you knowing. So that is what we call drive-by download. So next, we proceed with the further types of cyber attacks that is popular out there. SQL injections. SQL is actually a sort of database, or we call it SQL database. So what a SQL injection is, that it's a code in malicious code injections whereby attacker inject malicious code to tamper the data stored in the database or any data-driven applications. For example, if these malicious codes are being injected into an e-commerce website, a particular product with the price of $100 can become $1. So that is one of the examples for SQL injections. For cross-site scripting, it's also another form of malicious code injections, but it's targeted on client-side scripting, whereby the main purpose is to bypass security controls. Usually, cross-site scripting only happens in vulnerable websites that do not that do not patch up and do their that do not patch up and do their security assessment properly. Nowadays, cross-site scriptings are pretty much low. But all right, distributed DOS or DDoS, I believe quite a lot of you have heard before. So what does it do is that the attacker actually invoke all the zombies that he managed to compromise to attack a particular host or device concurrently in order to break the threshold for the device, or for the not only device, or as well as the application, the network, so that we can cause the network down or application failure. So sometimes you see that a particular website suddenly down, or particular services it's down. Probably it's being attacked by distributed denial of service. So that's what DDoS is about. All right, then we move on with zero-day attack. Some people call it day zero. Some people call it zero-day attack. So in fact, zero-day attack actually happens to all sorts of attacks that I've mentioned up there just now, especially those viruses, trojans, worms, even the ransomware recently that being discovered 2-3 years ago. What does zero-day means is that a particular vulnerability that is being discovered unprecedentedly, and this vulnerability can cause severe damage, and whether it's in terms of financial impact or operational impact, and it's spread in a very uncontrollable speeds, and that's what we call day zero or zero-day attack. So no mitigation can be done for zero-day attack because no patch is available. So the similarity here in terms of what we face here is that today is the COVID pandemic. So we need vaccines for COVID pandemic. Same here. If the manufacturer or the vendor for the particular system, if he or she didn't produce the patch, then the vulnerability will further impact all the compromised systems. So IoT-based attack usually is used to launch DDoS attacks, whereby IoT means Internet of Things. It can be your smartwatch, it can be your smart aircon, your fridge, your phones, your everything, or your Google Home, like your Amazon Alexa. As long as anything that is connected to the net, it's called IoT. Nowadays we call it IoE, which stands for Internet of Everything. So as long as it's connected, definitely there will be a certain vulnerability or loopholes. Attacker can actually exploit this vulnerability to launch a DDoS attack against somebody or certain systems. One of the prominent real-life example that I can share with you is there is this DDoS attack. We call it Mirai botnet that causes 146 petabytes of traffic in year 2018. 146 petabytes, if you're unsure, is how massive or how humongous is that? It's actually 146,000 terabytes of traffic. So it's enough to break everything. it's enough to choke up any traffic. All right. The next one is the most important one. It's the password attacks, whereby this is what attacker likes to do. They always like to steal and guess your password by means of these techniques that I mentioned below, whether brute force. Brute force means they'll try one by one until they get it. But a lot of systems these days, they don't allow, they can actually sort of like lock your account after 3 or 5 times trying. So brute force doesn't really work these days. Dictionary attacks is like attackers will try with all the common words that people always like to use. It can be password, for example, password by itself, or 1, 2, 3, 4, whatever. Those easily guess password, or probably their name, their spouse, or even their pets or whatever. There's something that's related to them. Password spraying is that the attacker trying all sorts of combinations against the users by means of hashing. Hashing, for some of you, might be a bit too technical. I don't think I wanted to continue with that. But then other methods for password attacks is like shoulder surfing. It's very simple. You just peep on somebody's laptop behind him, and you look at what he typed, shoulder surfing, or probably just install a software keylogger in his machine, or on his phone or tablet or whatever. So later on, you can sniff whatever password he types. So that's what keylogger and shoulder surfing is all about. All right. Next one is the very famous one for the recent years. It's negative commentary, or we call it cyberbully, or cyber harassments, whereby if any social celebrities, if they say something or they say something wrong, then all the commenters will just attack their page with all sorts of very nasty words. So this is also one type of cyber attacks in the recent days. All right, time check a bit. Ivy, how much time do I have?
Yeah, 20 minutes left.
20 minutes left. I think that's good.
I think give it 15 minutes. 15 minutes, 5 to 10 minutes for your Q&A. Yeah.
All right. Okay. Thank you. Okay. I've covered the 3 pillars here. So let's move on with the I so-called this new normal for our cyber hygiene. So before that, let's carry on with a survey, second survey. So let's give you a minute or 2.
We just launched the second survey. You can go to the poll icon right below your webinar and answer the questions and vote for the questions. Thank you. Give it another 10 seconds.
I am running through some of the questions here. So I saw one of the questions: what are some ways to recover a device that got infected by ransomware besides paying ransom? Okay, paying ransom, first of all, it doesn't guarantee you to recover back your data. So the best thing that you should do is you should always do your due care diligently, whereby you should always do regular backups. If you don't have a backup, most likely it's gone. It's gone if you don't pay for the ransom. Let me check what other questions I have here. My company starts to migrate from local server to cloud. How safe is the cloud which a company engage? All right, if let's say they are those three reputable clouds company like AWS, Amazon Web Services, GCP, Google Cloud Platform, as well as Microsoft Azure, they are the 3 top most reputable cloud out there that already pass all sorts of security assessment and being regulated locally by all the governments, and even pass all sorts of banking and financial institution requirements. So whatever requirements the client, in this case, your company requires, they can provide to you. So the question here is that how secure? So the assurance is there because they have already passed all sorts of assessment, rigorous assessment, I call it, out there in the market. If you notice, why is there still sort of cybersecurity incidents being triggered in all this application and environment that is being migrated to the cloud? Is that it depends on what platform that you subscribe, whether you subscribe to platform as a service or infrastructure as a service or software as a service. If it's always lies on the particular control that you subscribe, because that is where usually the cybersecurity incident or the breach happens. So this is where you need to perform your due diligence and your due care. So okay, I'll try to answer the rest of the questions later on. But Ivy, is the poll closed already?
Yes.
Oh,
so
okay.
Yes. So a lot of them disagree that security is a hindrance, meaning they are okay with having certain security, but we have quite a close between agree. A lot of people think security is actually a hindrance.
Oh yeah, we have
half.
We have about half disagree that is actually a hindrance. Okay, that's all right. But let me share with you some of the impact and some of the scary numbers. So we have quite of all these scary numbers that happen in the recent years, whereby all these six tech giants out there and also hotel chains have all these security incident breach that impacted few hundred million users. You see, Yahoo, they impacted 3 billion users. Facebook, you have 550 million. Marriott Hotel, you have 500 million. Adobe back then, 150. LinkedIn, you 165, 330. But you might be asking, all these data breaches and incident, what has it got to do with me? What's the impact to me? I don't see any. It doesn't. I mean, as an end user, what should I do? What should I care? You might have this question with you. But before that, let me show you something much more relevant to Malaysia and Singapore, which only happened last 2-3 days or probably last week. It happens to our Malaysia Airlines and our Singapore Airlines, whereby data leaks affected all 10 years of frequent flyers data being leaked out for Malaysia Airlines. And Singapore Airlines, you have about 580,000 of frequent flyers being leaked out. Both happened last week. It just freshly out of the oven. And the third one, credit cards being dumped online or the dark web. So do you see the impact here? I believe some of you might not see the impact, but let me share with you what are the impact and the aftermath for both the consumer like us as well as the companies that are being compromised. So very clear cut. What are the impact for consumer is that if your details, your name, your email, your IC number, your passport, your credit cards, your bank account numbers, what else? Or your date of birth or anything that is sensitive to you, which is able to identify who you are, it's being stolen and being leaked out online, then you'll be a likelihood to become an identity theft victims. Once you are identity theft victims, what are the consequences you will have is that definitely you might have some fraudulent transactions in your bank accounts, in your credit cards, your savings account, current account, or nowadays even e-wallets also can be attacked. So if all these accounts is being compromised, thereon obviously you will lead into account suspensions if you transfer too much money out, or probably if the authority detected that there are suspicious accounts, suspicious activities in these accounts. Of course, your accounts will be suspended. But too bad, even though it's not being done by you, but it will be suspended for further investigation because of your failure to perform your due care diligently. Same goes to the organization or the companies or any conglomerates that fail to safeguard all these security measures. What would they face is that definitely they will face very hefty penalty from all the regulators, especially dealing with data breach. If you're dealing with data breach in terms of all the European data, then you'll be slapped with multi-million dollars under the GDPR Act. GDPR, Global Data Privacy Regulations. It's regulated in to safeguard all the Europeans. So with all this hefty penalty being slapped on all this compromised organization, definitely you will have revenue loss and customer loss, because which customer will still wanted to put their faith on all these companies that fail to protect their personal identity, right? So if customer loss obviously will also lead into reputational loss. So all these are a huge impact for all these compromised companies. And with all this happen, definitely the company will perform the necessary cleanup, which will take considerable amount of time to build up all their losses. So for those who voted disagree earlier on, I just would like to reiterate this, that please safeguard all your personal identity and do your due diligence to ensure you carry out your cyber hygienes diligently, which I'll share it later on. Okay, let me also share with you some research done by Deloitte recently in terms of what are the tactics that's being carried out by these cyber criminals. So what Deloitte conclude is that as working from home becomes a norm, cyber criminals are attempting to access corporate details and intellectual property to business, but the weakest link is always the human nature. So that's why we need to carry out our own cyber hygiene at all times. So this is where I'll land in our 6 pillars of cyber hygiene. I categorize it in very very similar to our COVID new normal practice. So what do we have here is that we have PPE, we have social distancing for social media, and avoid direct contact, and clean your digital footprints and boost your digital immunity, and also to perform vaccination as and when needed. So what is PPE? PPE is some things like antivirus, personal firewall, endpoint protection, and stuff like that. So I'll go through all this one by one. Yeah, Ivy, how much time do I left? 5
minutes maybe.
All right.
You can speed up maybe. Yeah, speed up a little. Thanks.
Okay, PPE, like what I've mentioned earlier on, please do invest in a reputable endpoint protection. Endpoint protection out there for layman is actually internet security suites that combines antivirus, personal firewall, spam guard, and all sorts of things. And please don't use those cracked versions, because cracked versions, it's a form of Trojans whereby you will have a covert communications allows the attacker to access your machines. Yeah. So having installed with all this endpoint protection is not enough, because you always need to update your definition and the software version regularly. Otherwise, your PPE will just be obsolete. So some examples, I mean, some of the example product we have here is like Kaspersky endpoint protection, Symantec endpoint protection for firewalls, checkpoint zone alarm, Malwarebytes, CrowdStrike, and so on. Yeah. So social media distancing. Nowadays, I think everybody can't live without social media. With COVID pandemic, we have social distancing. Same goes for our social media. We need to have social distancing as well. We need to look out for phishing messages, because on and off, there are a lot of suspicious strangers send us some messages to cross-sell their products, whether it's a genuine communication or it's just phishing purpose. We don't know. So we always need to watch out for that. And obviously, we need to use strong passwords. I'll show you what is strong passwords later on in the password section. We have a lot of different social media platforms. We have Facebooks, we have WhatsApp, Telegram, whatever. Obviously, don't use the same password across all of them. Please use different passwords. Yeah. And always review your public profile. Try not to share all your sensitive information, like where did you study during your secondary school, who is your spouse, who is your wife, all this. I mean, all those, anything that can relate to you, try not to share if you can. Yeah. Try not to share. So review. Please always ask yourself, is it necessary to tell the whole world about all these details? So do a review and audit. All right, next. Like I mentioned, don't share unnecessarily. Use 2FA or MFA. 2FA means two-factor authentication or multi-factor authentication. What is two-factor authentication? Is that authentication always deals with password. Password is something you know. So password itself, it can be guessable. So in order to add a layer of protection, we use multi-factor or two-factor. So password is something you know. So we can use something you have. In this case, like for example, your banking apps is always a two-factor authentication, whereby you need to punch in your passwords. Then later on, they send you a PIN or PAD or OTP tag, PAC, whatever. That PAC tag, PIN, or whatever you call it, is actually something you have. So something you have plus something you know. So it's multi-factor authentication or two-factor authentication. So like what I mentioned, block unsolicited spams, and always lock your devices, whether your tablet, your phone, your laptops, with PIN code and passwords. We do notice that some people out there, they never PIN protect their device. Whoever can just open up their device as and when they want. That's very dangerous. So lock your devices. And of course, always review all the app permissions and try not to link all your social network apps together. Like you link your LinkedIn to your Facebook you link to your Telegram or whatever. So if one is being compromised, everything will be compromised. Try not to link if possible. All right, next, avoid direct contact. So what you can do is that ignore and delete suspicious email messages if you happen to receive anything. And if you're in doubt, if you receive any request that you're in doubt, for example, you receive a message from your friend, and it sounds like he needs an urgent fund because he's somewhere in the world out there, make a call. Nowadays, call is free. Just go get a video call, whatever. Just call him. Is it really legitimate? Yeah, make a call. And don't accept requests from strangers. A lot of people nowadays, they just add friends without knowing who they are. So don't do that if possible, because some of them, they could be imposters. Like I mentioned, block and report spammers if you receive anything. Yeah. Restrict privacy and security settings. It's about reviewing your social media privacy settings. Like what I mentioned earlier, review how much you share. Try not to share if you can. Don't divulge any sensitive personal info like your for example, if you're in vacation, then you share your location. Then if any of the attackers saw that your status, they probably can launch an attack to your house router if you forgot to turn off your router or your CCTV or whatever. Yeah. The last one is it's about the USB drive. A lot of people, due to curiosity, they will pick up the USB drive on the floor, unknown USB drive on the floor, and try to find out what are the content. Don't ever do that. Don't ever do that, because we won't know those USB drives was being deliberately left by the attacker or not. Because nowadays storage are very cheap. You can have all sorts of free storage out there by Google or Dropbox or iCloud or whatever. Don't need to pick up all these unknown USB drives, because you wouldn't know you might be affected by all sorts of malware the moment you hook it up. So that is why you notice some companies out there, they already block USB ports. This is the reason. Okay, avoid direct contact. Again, look out for banks and social media phishing emails, because there are a lot of phishing emails that appear to be like banks or social media, whereby they tell you, hey, your credit card is being blocked, your account is blocked, your Facebook is blocked or whatever. So most of them are fake. Yeah, most of them are fake. But do look out. I mean, do hover over your mouse to the URL to see whether the URL is suspicious or not. And always don't click any URL in the email, even if it appears from someone that you know. Type the URL yourself. Yeah. Only download apps from trusted source. Trusted source in this case means that like your App Store, your Google Play Store, your Huawei app gallery, and so on. Don't download from the website link. Yeah, because we wouldn't know whether all these are Trojan horses or whatever. Only download from all these the trusted vendors. Yeah. A lot of apps or software, they have a features that allows you to always sign in. Try not to turn on this. Yeah. Try to opt out, always sign in, and always opt out, save my password. Although we know that we have 1,001 passwords to remember, but there is something called password vault out there that can actually store all your passwords. Don't save your passwords. Don't turn on all these save my password in all the respective apps there. If it's being compromised, then it will be a trouble for you. So like what I mentioned earlier on, don't visit suspicious sites and don't link all your apps unnecessarily, because if you link them, once it's being compromised, everything is gone. All right, clean your digital footprints, review your accounts, like what I mentioned earlier on, and delete and deactivate accounts. Some of the apps or some of the software that you no longer use for a long time already, by all means, delete your accounts, delete your access, because you wouldn't know whether the company might be attacked by cyber criminals or not. So try to remove as much access you can as possible. Do a search on yourself means try to do a search from Google to see whether do you have a digital footprint yourself on the net or not? How much exposure yourself in the cyber world? So if too much of yourself in the cyber world is not so good thing, because attacker can have a lot of information on you and turn against you. So do a search on yourself. Yeah. Review all your privacy settings I've mentioned earlier on, and curate your online presence. Is that, like what I mentioned earlier, don't share as much. I mean, don't share if you can. Limit your sharing as much as possible. And don't put sensitive personal info. Yeah. All right, next, delete files. Okay. Regularly do health scans for your machines to check for malwares, and of course to apply updates to your machines or devices, your phones, your tablets, or anything, or even your IoT devices, your watch, your CCTV, your fridge, your air cons, everything, it can be updated. So please do all your updates, even your and your smart TVs, especially those smart TVs that has camera. Please do so. Remove apps and access as and when you don't need, and obsolete devices. If you know, I'm sure that a lot of us have a lot of old phones, old laptops. If you don't use it already, please re-image your device or reformat your device twice before you dump it aside in your junkyard. Yeah. All right. Just now I mentioned about passwords. So this is about boosting your digital immunity. So what is strong passwords? If you can see here, I use strong passphrase, which consists of capital letters, small letters, special characters, and it's not a dictionary words as well. So the longer, the better. And of course, don't use the same passphrase or password across all your apps or your softwares or your whatever access, especially your social network bankings. And don't recycle all these passwords. Like for example, bank A, you use this, bank A, you use 1234, for example. Bank B, next time when it's due to reset your password, then you use 1234. No, don't. Try not to, if possible. You can use a password generator to generate a complex password. But if you cannot remember, doesn't matter. Invest in a reliable password vault to store all your complex passwords. To be honest, I don't remember any of my passwords. I only remember one particular password, which is my vault passwords. Yeah, because there are simply too many access out there for me. Yeah, okay. Always change the password. And of course, change your default passwords. For example, how many of you change your default router passwords when all these Maxis la, Singtel la, when they set the router login password for you? Never, right? Please do so. Please do so. I'm not talking about the Wi-Fi password, I'm talking about the router console logged in. That one. Change your default passwords. Please do so. So, and also your passphrase, if you use passphrase like what I did just now. So change immediately if you notice your devices has been breached or your access has been breached. Like for example, just now, both airline company has been breached. I'm sure that both these airlines, some of us have sub profiles or frequent flyer programs with them. Since they already declared that they're being breached, please by all means change your password ASAP. Yeah. What I mean by use a front camera cover is that nowadays a lot of table or laptop, it comes with a camera cover like this. Yeah. Use a front camera cover all the time if you don't use your camera. Best thing is that if you're technical enough to disable the camera driver in device manager or whatever settings, please do so if you don't use it. That's even better. Or even disable your mic is also one of the way. So 5, secure your home network is also one of the immunity booster. This one is a little bit technical, but if you understand what is it, yes, I strongly recommend you do so. Limit the number of devices because Wi-Fi by itself, it's a network. You can actually subnet it to limit how many devices that you can connect. For example, your house, you have 10 devices, your TV, your laptop, your phone, whatever. Then you create a smaller subnet to allow these devices to connect to your Wi-Fi. And if possible, don't broadcast your Wi-Fi name. In technical term, it's called SSID. And if you really need to broadcast your SSID, because some of the devices like your smart TV can't detect your SSID, you need to broadcast it. Don't use something identifiable like, for example, if you stay in a high-rise with a unit 1-1, don't create a SSID called 1-1 or something called something that's identifiable to you. Don't do that. And of course, don't use the default SSID created by your vendors, like from your Maxis, from your Singtel or StarHub or whoever. And always apply the strongest encryption. Today, up until this moment, is WPA2 AES. Use this method. Use this encryption. Turn off these following settings if you can. Don't use DHCP if you're technical enough. Don't use the Wi-Fi protector setup, the WPS, the universal plug and play, UPnP, and port forwarding, if you know how to do it. If you don't, you can try to always Google up your router settings to see how do you actually can turn off all these features. And of course, if you're sleeping, no point to have your Wi-Fi and modem on unless you have a CCTV running, or unless you have your smart home running. Then no choice, you have to have your Wi-Fi and modem on. If you don't have all this, it's very advisable to turn it off. Yeah, it lower down the likelihood of being attacked. Yeah. What else? Okay, MAC filtering is a bit technical, but if you know how to do it, by all means, please do so. If your router or devices can have features like firewall and DDoS protection, please turn it on. Please disable remote access, because there is no need for consumer to have remote access turned on for your router. It would just add on another layer of risk for all the attacker to take over your router or your modem or whatever. Don't do that. And update your device firmware as and when the vendor releases the updates. Like I mentioned earlier on, change your router default login the moment you get it. If you know how to create a separate network, please do so, so that if your guests come in, you can actually turn it on for them. If you know that your router is being compromised, or the manufacturer posts an announcement bulletin saying that, hey, your model has discovered a severe vulnerability, please contact your vendor to replace it. Yeah. The last one is about vaccinate your device. Basically, it's about patching up all your device as and when, if any patches, security patches is available. This is to prevent the zero-day outbreak to further compromise everybody. So other than that, please also always password protect your devices. If your devices comes with any GPS functions that turn on Find My Device and remote wipe, turn them on, so that if, let's say, all your your devices are being stolen, you can remotely locate your device and remote wipe them. And always do your backup regularly. In case if your device is being encrypted by ransomware, at least you still have a contingency plan to just start everything fresh by rolling back your backup. So always practice your cyber hygiene. You definitely can do it. And thank you very much for your time. So Ivy, back to you. Sorry if it's overrun.
All right, no problem. Thank you, Michael, for the insightful topic on cybersecurity. What are the types of cybersecurity, as well as what do we do as users of we cannot avoid using it. Yeah, so we can have steps to mitigate all these threats. So let's go straight to the questions. We have some questions going on right now. So let me read to you 1 to 2, and I collated some of the questions to save time. So there's questions coming from Ji Ming, and also who's asking, 5G is coming to our life. So will this increase the risk of cyber attacks? And there's also another question saying the same thing. 5G, AIML, they are coming to our life now. So will this increase the risk of cyber attacks to us?
Yes, definitely. In fact, there are these days there are something called AI-driven attacks, whereby all these attacks can learn all sorts of behavior and change according to the situations. So with all this machine learning that is happening out there in the world, so cyber security measurements are also increasingly challenged on a daily basis, whereby we also need to cope up with the speed of all these what do you call connected device. The 5G is actually what do you call an opener for more security incidents to happen, because the more connected devices out there, the more chances of attacks happening. It's whether or not the attack successfully exploited is a different case. But yes, the more devices connected in out there, given that the bandwidth is cheaper due to 5G enrollment, so cybersecurity professionals really need to beef up their skills in order to adapt with all these security challenges, especially dealing with AI-driven attacks. We for example, there are also AI-driven endpoint protection, which roll out by a company called Sentinel-1 endpoint protection, whereby this Sentinel-1 AI-driven endpoint protection able to detect a Microsoft vulnerability that is being hidden for don't know how many years, whereby the rest of other vendors out there, they won't be able to detect. So yeah, we have this sort of solutions. So okay, I hope I answered this question. What else do we have?
We have questions coming from like, if we are doing internet banking, Tiamhat asking, we are doing internet banking, do we need to install some kind of security software? And is it true that the myth saying that Mac OS the security is better than say Windows OS or Chromebook OS? Is it true?
I wouldn't call it whether true or false. It's just that the reason why you notice Windows is more susceptible to attacks is because the number of users in Windows is higher. And the reason being why is it because of it's susceptible to attacks is due to the number of users are higher. So attackers have more chances to have more successful attacks in terms of all this what do you call Windows environment. And as usual, you can see that Microsoft security bulletins are way the rollout are way more frequent compared to the rest of other OSs out there. But if you say that if Chrome OS or Mac OS are they bulletproof and secure? No, there's no such thing called bulletproof security in the world. They also share the same risk. It's just that the vulnerability that you see is much lesser. Probably it's because due to the number of users are lesser. So that is the explanation that I could share.
There's questions coming from like things like we have this landing page, and then this landing page you always misled us, it could not be, maybe it's not the real website, and then we have also a question coming in saying that this extension like search.com, even you remove it, it keeps popping out as your search engine, and so how do we prevent this from happening, or is this a real threat to us, a landing page that is misleading us?
Okay, most likely cases like this is due to spyware or due to Trojan horses that is already infected your machines, your especially your browser's extension. The best thing to do is that do a damage cleanup by getting your endpoint protection solutions ready to do those virus removal. If let's say virus removal also doesn't work, best thing to do is that start everything fresh and not to visit all those dangerous and risky websites anymore already. So most likely it's already being compromised.
So we also have a long question. I think this is more to legislation. With the rampant data leaks, how relevant is the PDPA 2010 Act? And what would be the resolution to this in terms of legislation? Do you have any comment on that?
For Malaysia or Singapore ones?
I think PDPA Act
Both
2010.
Also. 2010, I believe that one refers
Malaysia.
to Malaysia one.
Yeah.
With rampant to data leaks, how relevant is the PDPA 2010 Act and what could be the resolution to this in terms of legislation? So I would say that if it's all boiled down to the enforcement, Richard would like to answer this question live. Okay, sorry, I'm actually looking at that question. So, so if let's say a company is being compromised and they declare it to the regulator, then obviously they will be slapped with the necessary penalty that is being predefined by all these regulators. So, which I think I've also covered that in the slide earlier on already. Hope I answered your question correctly.
So we have maybe due to the time constraint, we take one more common question. I think the question comes from a very general question. To your opinion, what is the biggest cyber threat to companies right now?
Biggest cyber threats right now, it's about, like for example, just now day zero and also ransomware. But ransomware and day zero is something. It's something like a new vulnerability that has not been discovered, but it can cause severe damage to everything. So these two are the biggest threats. But the thing is that threats out there, it can happen on daily basis. It always boils down to whether the company or the individuals, whether they carry out their due care diligently or not, like the best practices that I've mentioned. However, the best practices that I mentioned just now, that I shared with you just now, they are all mainly for individual basis. Companies one, we have other solutions out there, like for example, we have surveillance system for big data surveillance systems. We have what else? We have unified security platforms, and we have what else? Intrusion prevention with AI ML features. Other things that provided by managed security services platform. So, but those are big budgets, I would say. But for individual basis, do apply those best practices that I shared with you just now, so that it will lower down your likelihood of being attacked. I wouldn't dare to say that it will safeguard you on a 100% basis, but it would definitely deter a lot of rookie attackers. But if you're being targeted, like for example, you are a whaling target or spear phishing targets, then chances of successful attack might be very high, because it's a motivated attacks by a group of cyber criminals.
So before we end, maybe one more. Can you take one more before we end? Yeah. Okay. We have a question here asking, what do you think of proctoring software. I'm not very familiar with the term. Are they a breach of privacy, and can they potentially be spywares?
Proctoring software, especially used in the exam centers, I assume, because I myself always being proctored when I take my security certifications. So are they a breach of privacy, and can they be potentially be spyware? Potentially, if let's say the proctoring software, they do not, I mean, the vendor did not do rigorous security assessment. If all the cyber criminals manage to exploit them, then yes, it could be potentially be spyware. But however, if you ask me whether are they legally bound by legislation or not, I would say that before they roll out all this, they have already passed all the necessary legislation requirement already. It's just that in terms of details, what is passed and what not, I'm not so sure. But yeah, potentially it can turn into spyware if the codes are not written in a poorly structure, or attackers have managed to find out any exploitable vulnerabilities in this proctoring software. Hope I able to answer your questions. Probably I can take one more. I think the last one, I think Dato one. What about using public Wi-Fi or hotel room Wi-Fi?
Good question.
That one, everybody's doing it. That one, I would strongly discourage you to do that, especially if you are dealing with financial transactions, because you wouldn't know if you are being tapped in, if you are being MITM. Sorry, MITM stands for the man in the middle attack, which I shared earlier on, because you wouldn't know. So try not to. But if you really cannot have a data plan in a foreign market, in a hotel room, what you can do is that install a reliable VPN in your machines, in your devices. Don't use all those free VPN by Turbo VPN, free VPN that it's free. Try to use those VPN that is provided by those security companies like Avira, Kaspersky, what else? Malwarebytes, all those produced by security companies. At least they are reliable, because those free one, we wouldn't know whether are they Trojan horses or not, because the risk is that your traffics might also be eavesdropping or sniffed by the manufacturer. Sorry, the app producer. Try not to use public Wi-Fi, and especially if you see some free public Wi-Fi in hotel or shopping mall. A lot of people say, yeah, free Wi-Fi, use it. Try not to lah. Especially if you perform what do you call banking transactions. Avoid that by all costs if you can. I would strongly discourage that. For some questions, if I can't answer you, you can reach out to me offline. And I saw there's a very technical questions out there, which I don't think I can answer here, because it's very and I mean targeted questions on her environment. That one, if Hui Min wants it, we can bring it offline.
So 9:26. It's okay. Yeah, I think thank you. Thank you so much, Michael, for giving your time to and spending your time to provide us some awareness, if not knowledge on cybersecurity, because this is what we face every day. We have our social media with us, and then we face this threat every day. And being working in a large company, we are very, very afraid of this, and it happens almost daily. I have to say, daily. Yeah, yes. My company says threats happen daily, cybersecurity threats. So it's
happen on every second, actually, whether it's successful or not.
Correct. So I would like to end this webinar by once again, thank you, Michael.
Thank you, Ivy, and thank you, KFSC, for giving me this opportunity for my sharing session. Hope that my session wasn't too dry and make all of you asleep.
No, it wasn't. I thought it would be, but it's not. Thanks.
I try to be as layman as possible, because
that's important.
I noticed that we have a lot of different groups of background here. So I try to be as layman as possible. So I hope that it's really beneficial to all of you. And if I cause any of you asleep, sorry for that.
So I also would like to take this opportunity on behalf of KFSC. We'd like to thank all the attendees and participants today and for your questions. I hope you can, before you end, you please fill up the feedback form that will be provided at the end of the webinar. Just fill out the form so that we can have some improvement to our next event. We are also in the midst of setting up a website for KFSC. So please stay tuned to our Facebook website for now. For now, we are still setting the KFSC website. So once again, thank you for giving your beloved Saturday time to us, and I hope you have gained some valuable insights to cybersecurity. And thank you so much once again. So stay safe, everyone. Yeah, take care.
Thank you.
Thank you.